Well, I grew up in New Hampshire. I was going to be an aerospace engineer, and the entire family moved to California in '65. Joined a rock and roll band and played in college. And in 1967, I think it was, my brother was at a restaurant in Santa Monica, and some guy shakabukied him. 2 months later, I was hanging out at the local mall, and these two young ladies came bouncing up to me and asked me if I've ever heard of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And immediately I thought, I wonder if that's what my brother was talking about. But I said no, I had never heard about it, and they invited me to a meeting the next night. And at the time, I was very low in self-confidence, self-esteem, kind of quiet, withdrawn. And I broke a pattern and I went to the meeting. And the meeting was mostly college-age kids jumping up and sharing experiences and all this. It was very electric. And I thought, well, this sounds pretty good. But I had the impression either it was real or they had a drama class at college and they were putting on a play called Buddhist Meeting. So I took the words, I went home, locked myself in my room, got on the bed, shut off the lights, sat in what I thought was a Buddhist position, and I chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo for 2 hours. At the end of 2 hours, I stood up, turned on the light, and I felt like I had just lost 50 pounds of weight on my body. It was emotional baggage that I didn't know was there until it lifted. And I go, oh my gosh, I feel something here. I received my Gohonzon in March of '68, and I went to the Hawaii Convention in August of that year. But at the same time, I was asked by the draft board. Basic training was physically rigorous. Nobody wanted to be there. We're all draftees. 8 weeks of basic, and then I was assigned to be in the infantry, and then we flew on a DC-8 to Japan. And we stopped in Japan to refuel. When we got there, there was a flight from Vietnam, and they were on one side of the commissary. And they were pretty much silent. And we had gotten off the plane, and we were kind of chit-chatting with one another, and there was some energy and just hanging out together, and everybody was halfway positive anyway. But that other group was almost totally quiet, and I said, this doesn't make any sense to me. If you are coming back from Vietnam, you should be whooping it up. So anyway, we left from Japan. We landed in Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam, and we were going to be sent out to a fire base, or sometimes called an LZ, landing zone. When the new guys get there, they're the ones that are going to be put in the most difficult position. So they called a meeting for our squad. Our squad was ordered to do a patrol outside the LZ. A patrol is, a squad is maybe 6 or 7, 8 men, and you just go out and check out, see what's going on around the perimeter, see if there's any movement or any, you just kind of reconnaissance just to see what's going on. So we're at this meeting and said, we've asked to do this patrol, and he looked at me and says, you're walking point. And point is the first person through the jungle. He's leading the way. And you space out, you probably give yourself maybe 15 feet between individuals so they, there's enough distance that they can't kill more than one of you at a time. But I said, no, I'm not. And that could have caused me a lot of trouble, but I guess the sergeant didn't want any trouble right then. So he looked at my friend, Ron Culver, says, you're walking points. And Rod said, okay. So we go out, and we're new. We go through the berm, go through the concertina wire into the jungle. And because we are new, we just took it really slow. So we go a little bit faster, and we come around a bend on the trail, and then we run in, there's a bunker, a bunker, and there's 2 young kids there, I'd say about 14 years of age, and they were the NVA. And they looked at us, and they didn't have weapons. They turned around, ran down the trail. And I thought, well, this is war, right? I'm supposed to do something. I stepped in the trail and fired a couple of shots over their heads. My prayer when I went was not to have to kill anybody and not to get hurt myself. So I didn't shoot at them, I just shot above their heads. So we spent a few more minutes then and turned around and started back. And those two kids went and got their buddies and came back, and they opened fire on us. Fortunately, I was behind a big anthill, and that lasted for 5 minutes. Nobody got hurt, and then they cut off contact and they backed off wherever they went. So we went back into the fire base, and then the next morning, about 4 a.m., they opened fire on the LZ. We grabbed our weapons. There was a guy there, I can't remember what position he held, but he said, "Get into this bunker." And they had a machine gun there, and we were giving them ammo to fire the machine gun. And it was just pure chaos. The noise, the smell of the gunpowder, the yelling, and all this stuff. And that went on for about an hour.
Difficult to chant during that time?
It just depended on the circumstances. If it was a safe area, I could chant out loud. Sometimes I'd be doing gongyo with the book in front of me in the chow line waiting to get my food. Other times it would be in my head, or if I went to bed and I hadn't done gongyo, I'd do it in my head. But most of the time it was in my head. Probably the most difficult situation is, I don't know where we were in country, they never tell us. I was in central Vietnam someplace, but all I knew was it was the jungle, right? We humped, that's the term they used, hump with your pack, it's like a 50-pound pack on, carrying extra ammunition for the machine gun, or a radio on your back, and you got grenades on your, all kinds of stuff. And we humped to this area that apparently 2 other companies had gone in, and they had gotten their asses kicked. And I guess the higher-ups felt that the NVA were hiding something. There was something of importance there. So our company was to go again, the third try. And it was our squad and platoon. Platoon is like 3 or 4 squads. So platoon is maybe 25 people. We were never at full capacity. And so we went in, and one of their tactics is that there was an ambush. So they let the first few people go by before they open up so they could separate. And that's what they did, and we really got into it. And at the time, I was a machine gunner's assistant. I carried a lot of extra machine gun ammo. The requirements of the machine gunner, he usually is back in the line somewhere. This is a pretty heavy piece of equipment. It's not like an M16. When you make contact, the machine gun comes up front, right? So he called up to the front, and you couldn't see anything. You never could see what you're shooting at.
What was the range of vision in the jungle?
Yeah, maybe 20, 30 yards, something like that. It was pretty thick. And so we went up front, and I brought my ammo, and you just fire indiscriminately because you don't know. You can hear where the gunfire is coming from. That went on for a while, and the guy that was walking point, he was down, and the fire broke off for a while. And so somebody had to go get him. He's in a picture. I took a picture because he had a monkey on his back. We were someplace next to a town waiting to get the helicopter to someplace else. And the locals came out with a monkey, and they gave him to us. So he had the monkey, literally a monkey on his back. He was down, and somebody had to get him. So I don't know who they were, a couple of guys, really brave guys. And they went out, and we were laying down fire while they brought him back. And he was shot full of holes, and he was on the ground, and we watched him die. June of 1970, flew down to Saigon and out of Tan Son Nhut, back to Japan to refuel. The same commissary that we were in going to Vietnam. And then everybody was on that plane in the commissary. I finally understood why they weren't very emotive. They were ecquiet, because you have to shut down your emotions. You become half a zombie, I think. And, everybody obviously was ecstatic to still be alive and getting out of there. But, all those emotions were suppressed. The waste of human life, the waste of money. So somehow I survived, and I managed to do gongyo virtually every day and chant some daimoku. I kept a journal for part of the time there. And it became very obvious when I wrote in the journal whether I was able to chant. When I was on a fire base, it was easier to chant, so sometimes I had more time to chant. I was extremely fortunate. I didn't have to kill anybody, at least not that I know of. I didn't get hurt. I just felt totally protected. After 54 years, it's unbelievable I'm sharing this with with anyone. I don't bring it up unless somebody asks me about it. When I talked to a psychologist, he asked me a series of questions, and at the end he said, "Yeah, you have PTSD." I went, "Whoa," and they said, "You may not know that you have it because you just think everything is normal, but it's not. Sometimes it's easy to get angry, trouble sleeping, nightmares about being in the service again." But just the fact that we're talking about it and it brings us up means there's something in there still in there that's affecting me, that I just kind of set aside or don't think about. But just sharing this with you. It's something very deep that doesn't go away. I don't know how else to explain it. In the most recent World Tribune, they're talking about dialogue and referencing these psychologists that studied prejudice and conflict. And the resolution of those things is dialogue, getting to know somebody as a human being, not as an other. Everybody knew I was against the war, right? I would send letters home with a peace sign on it. I would put doves of peace on the outside of the envelope and all kinds of things. And other people would ask me to do the artwork on the envelopes.
I'm so encouraged. On your altar, it says one new youth division member right there.
Yeah, so he's been coming to our meeting. He's 29, very bright young guy.
The power of one youth practicing Buddhism.
Yeah, it changes everything. Yeah. New blood, new excitement. So, but it's an ongoing thing. We just have to keep going. And there's no doubt about it that we have to raise successors. In November's Living Buddhism, the interview with Dean Carter was so profound in the sense that I think the sentence goes something like, if you worship the teacher, then essentially you're denying everything he said. The difference between worshiping and emulating is vast, and that's the point he's making, and that's mentor-disciple, and from my understanding anyway, it's not good enough. We don't worship Daisaku Ikeda, We try to become Daisaku Ikeda or Shinichi Yamamoto. Well, I'm just so appreciative of Keita Sensei. He's like a second father to me. I never got much guidance from my dad, but I always could rely on reading his guidance and encouragement. With all the things I've gone through, and I'm still going through stuff, but it just amazes me that this practice never fails if I put out the effort, if I make the effort and chant the Daimoku that it takes. And the organization that is so supportive. There's no other organization on the planet that embraces and encourages other human beings. The SGI does. And that's what this world needs, especially right now.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you for the opportunity.